What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the History Things podcast, another edition of From the Field, Season 5. Incredibly excited to be joined once again by my mate, Matt Waters here, co-host of the show, out from behind the microphones.
Right.
We do love doing that. We do love hanging out with our friends in the War Department studios, but every once in a while, we got to get out of the bunker. We need to see the sunlight. And that's what brings us to the field this year, because we're going to tell a story that's a little closer to home than most. Obviously, you know, we have connections and a lot of love for the 1864 Monocacy campaign. So what we're going to do today is sort of kick things off. We're going to follow Jubal Early's movements through the Shenandoah Valley, eventually into the culminating battle at Monocacy Junction in Frederick, Maryland, 1864. So Matt, let's sort of bring our listeners up to speed on the campaign. The Overland Campaign, which we hopefully will get into on the show one day, has sort of wrapped itself up. Grant came east from the Western Theater, assumed total operational command, and really started to put a squeeze on the Army of Northern Virginia. He went overland in a series of aggressive movements and maneuvers that resulted in some of the biggest battles the war has seen to this point. That is sort of ground to a halt, and we've moved into the siege of Petersburg, the long beginnings of the end of the war. How do we get from this moment where, as we know now in hindsight, that the war is now at the beginning of the end, to where there's another Confederate invasion? Sort of get us from the overland Petersburg crossover moment to our story today, Matt.
Sure, Pat. So what's happened is that though Grant has been hammering away with George Meade and the Army of the Potomac with the Overland Campaign, we have had other federal armies on the move. Specifically, we have had David Hunter's forces here in the Shenandoah Valley. They've been moving southward through the valley, or up the valley, if you will.
Yeah, keep track of that one. Good luck.
Angling for Lynchburg, Virginia. Lynchburg is an important railroad crossroads, and almost all of the grain and horses and things like that that's coming from the Shenandoah Valley to the Richmond-Petersburg front is passing through Lynchburg. And so it's a very important link in the Confederate supply chain that is now under threat. Robert E. Lee is going to be forced to break off a portion of the Army of Northern Virginia, the 2nd Corps, under the command of, at this point, Lieutenant General Jubal Early, and send him to Lynchburg. Now, Lynchburg does have some defenders. It has John Breckinridge, former Vice President of the United States, commanding Confederate forces there, but they are a small command. With the arrival of Early's forces, that's going to bump Confederate troop strength up into the neighborhood of 18,000 troops. That's about the same number of troops that David Hunter has.
All right.
Now, Early and Breckinridge together are going to trick David Hunter because they're roughly equal in strength. Confederate forces have come in by train. They are going to detrain. The bands play and the people cheer. They make a whole bunch of noise, and then Early sends the train away. Then he brings it back into Lynchburg. And then he sends it away again. Then he brings it back into Lynchburg. And every time it does, there's a ruckus. The bands play, the people cheer, and it sounds to those federal forces outside of Lynchburg that more and more Confederates are arriving.
This is a kind of sneaky move.
It is. And David Hunter is going to be concerned.
So he believes it?
He does. He's actually going to be
Okay.
sending messages to the War Department that he is concerned that he is now facing half Lee's army. He even at one point says he thinks Lee's entire army has decamped and is
Wow.
in his front. And he's not going to stick around to fight that.
Sure.
He's going to begin to fall back. He's going to fall back through the lower part of the Shenandoah Valley all the way over to Salem, Virginia, and at which point he is being driven by Early, who is giving pursuit. Once they hit the neighborhood of Salem, Hunter is driven from the Shenandoah Valley. There's a brief clash at Hanging Rock on the 21st of June, which would be the last action with Hunter's troops here in this part of the valley. And at this point, Jubal Early has a decision. He has cleared the valley of Confederate forces, as he was asked to do.
So I was going to ask, so the primary objective has been reached. Get the, essentially what is the breadbasket of the Confederacy, get this resource free of federal threat,
Right.
U.S. threat, and then it comes to the choice of your secondary objective. But it's end of June where he's already got the primary objective sort of wrapped up in a bow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Lee has told Early that if he finds it practicable, he should then proceed down the Shenandoah Valley, cross the Potomac, and threaten Washington, D.C. And Early will decide to do that. Taking up the march on June 22nd, his forces will reach Stanton, Virginia 5 days later. And it would be there that he will reorganize the Confederate Army. Again, this was the Confederate Army the Confederate Second Corps Army of Northern Virginia, but now with Breckinridge's command, Early is going to reorganize this as the Army of the Valley District, with him being in charge and Breckinridge being his second in command.
Are they operating in a wing, two moving wings?
They're basically operating as two corps, two very small corps. Both Early and Breckinridge have two divisions under their direct command.
Okay.
They also have a large cavalry contingent that is operating on the flanks of this, because we're here in Winchester, Virginia, which would be one of the stops on Early's campaign. As he is driving north, he would pass right through historic Winchester on his way northward. The idea being that they would actually begin at this point to strike at the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad a little bit further to the north of us using that cavalry. Confederate forces reach Winchester on July 2nd, and a mere 2 days later, they would be right on the Potomac River at Harper's Ferry.
So stick around with us over the next couple of days, because you're going to see just how much ground this invasion force to be is going to cover. We're leaving you at July 2nd, 1864. The battle we're going to culminate with is July 9th. It's just 7 days from this moment. We hope you stick around and follow us on this pretty wild ride of a very often overlooked but incredibly important campaign of the American Civil War. So again, follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook by searching for the History of Things podcast. We'll be covering, again, the 160th anniversary commemoration of Jubal Early's invasion of the North, the third Confederate incursion north of the Potomac River. Catch you all later.